So I talk a lot in my videos about my history with sugar addiction. I mean, it was bad. If there's some sort of competition of who is the worst of the worst, I was definitely at the very least a contender. And I know that I'm not alone, at least being somewhere on the spectrum of sugar addiction. I might be at the far, or might have been at the far extreme end of it. I hope most people aren't where I was, but I do know that it's something that so many people face. It's just by talking to people, just by, participating in social media and reading books, you know that this is a widespread problem. And it is something that I was able to get past, even though it felt impossible, like really, truly impossible to get past. I was, after many years, able to put it behind me for good. So I thought I would do a quick video just sharing my journey with sugar and the things that worked for me to get past it. Now, I mean, I'm no expert at this. This is just my journey. But I did have a pretty bad case of sugar addiction and I was able to get past it. So I'll share those things that worked for me in case something in there might be helpful for somebody else. So my sugar addiction, my history with this actually started in childhood. And it's going to sound like I'm blaming my parents, but I'm not. I'm blaming the 80s. It was just the norm back then, as far as I could tell. We just ate sugar like nobody's business. Like it really wasn't all that bad for us. I remember, drinking Kool-Aid all the time, and people don't know what Kool-Aid is. It's just this drink that you make out of this package of powder, and it's just food coloring and chemicals. And you pour it into a jug with water, and then you just put in I don't know how many cups of sugar, and that's it. I remember buying bags of colored sugar with a stick made of candy, and then you dip the stick into the sugar and eat it. And the last example I'll give, because this was a daily thing for me, was cereal. So I ate cereal every day for breakfast. And my parents actually were quite good about buying the better ones, because it's a spectrum of cereal. Some of them are really sugary and some of them are better, although I don't think any of them, they're all highly processed and I don't think any of it's great for you. But it didn't matter because I put sugar on my cereal. So it didn't matter what kind of cereal they bought. And we kept a little sugar bowl with a spoon and that went out with the cereal. And I would just scoop so many scoops in. So it was bad. And this, continued in through once I got older and a teenager, and it just kept going. And I know there's still a lot of sugar consumption today. I think that's why so many of us are struggling, but at least now there's more awareness. But a lot of people still are eating a lot of sugar, children and adults alike, and it's hidden in everything we eat. So even I think when we think we're being healthy, we're still eating it quite a bit. And the last part of my sugar history that I'll share, just to highlight really what a crap show I was with sugar and how bad it was, is when I got into my late teens and my early 20s. So when I was still living at home, and then even when I moved out, my sugar cravings were so intense that I would wake up pretty much every single night in the middle of the night craving sugar. And I would get up out of bed in the middle of the night, pretty much every night, to go eat something sugary. And sometimes it was just eating some candy, or sometimes I would make myself a bowl of cereal in the middle of the night just to put a bunch of sugar on it. And I'd eat that and then I'd go back to bed and then I'd go to sleep. And this makes my head explode for a few reasons. But the biggest one, now I can't eat sugar at all barely during the day. I have to be so careful because if I do, within, 20 hours before I go to bed, I won't be able to sleep. But I guess that's youth. Your body is more resilient and puts up with more abuse. So my strategy for most of my 20s was to white knuckle it during the week and just really try and use willpower to not eat sugar. But I think we all know, I've definitely come to appreciate that we can't rely on willpower to change any kind of behavior because it runs out eventually. So I could last, I think I did Monday to Friday, no sugar, but Saturday and Sunday was a free for all. I could have whatever I wanted. And then the weekend would come, and Friday night, I would be so excited about getting to eat sugar the next day that I wouldn't even be able to sleep. I remember laying in bed, literally not being able to sleep because I was just so excited, like a kid going to Disneyland the next day. It's really just insane. And then the weekend would come and it wasn't even the good stuff. I wasn't buying nice chocolates and fancy pastries. I would just go to 7-Eleven, the corner store or the grocery store, and just load up on processed, cheap crap and just get mountains of it. And I would eat until I made myself sick, and then I'd stop. And then, within an hour or two, I'd start to feel a bit better, and then I'd eat some more. And I just had a pile of it in the house for the weekend, and I just went crazy. And then when I was 30 years old, almost overnight, I got sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, and That really turned my world upside down. And my doctor told me the sugar had to go, and every book I read told me the sugar had to go. So I just kind of upped my white knuckling it to a whole new level. Again, trying to use willpower to cut it out, but those cravings were so intense. I was just at a permanent battle with sugar. It was like every moment of every day, just trying not to eat sugar, but thinking about it and wanting it and craving it. It ruled me. It was my master. It was so strong. I thought I was just born that way. Like it must have been part of my physiology. It was really, really tough. And my doctor was getting me to take, lots of different supplements and things to help that he thought might help with the sugar cravings, and nothing helped. And I did get past this eventually, shockingly. Somehow it was so bad, it didn't seem like that would ever be possible. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and analyzing my health journey. And as far as I can see, there were 3 things that allowed me to finally move past this. When I boil it down, it's actually really just one thing. And I have this theory about why I had this sugar addiction and about why I was able to get past it. And it's just my theory, but a lot of what I've read seems to support it. So there might be something to it. I'll share it with you and tell me what you think. So the reason that I believe that I struggled with sugar addiction for so long is that I had an army of problematic microbes living in my gut. So I talk a fair bit in my videos, if you've seen any of the other videos about the microbiome and, the symbiotic relationship of bacteria and fungi and whatever else is there that allows us to thrive. And so much of our health and even our behavior, is shocking, is determined by the bugs that live in our gut. And I had an absolute army, like 1,000 armies in my gut that fed off of sugar. Probably started with a very small amount as a child, but over all those years, I kept feeding those bugs, and they just kept multiplying and multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And something that I've come to appreciate from different books that I've read is how powerful these microorganisms in our body are in influencing our behavior. They can actually get us to do things by sending these intense sugar cravings, these demands for sugar so that they could be fed. It really more than I could ignore most of the time. And eventually they always won. I used to think of it like there was a sugar beast inside of me demanding to be fed. And it's crazy. There actually kind of was, but not just one beast, probably billions or trillions of teeny tiny ones. So the more I fed them over the years, the more I had, and the more difficult it became. So crazy how these tiny little bugs can take control of a giant ass human. Essentially, the one unifying sort of thing that I had to do to get past this was to kill off all those bugs. And there were 3 things that I believe are what contributed to my killing them all off. And the first way I did it is I starved them. And the reason I was able to finally stick to this, by starving them, by eating less sugar, is, after a couple years into my CFS journey, when I partially recovered, I had this sort of early midlife crisis, kind of eat, pray, love style. And I just put everything I owned into storage, except for a backpack. And then I bought myself a ticket to Southeast Asia, and I went backpacking for a year by myself. And I was in a lot of rural regions, poor countries, and places where I just couldn't basically find the sugary stuff that I was used to eating. The local cuisine was took some getting used to. It was a lot of new foods, and I couldn't really find desserts and stuff that I liked or that I wanted. And there wasn't, a big convenience store or a massive grocery store on every street. So it wasn't so easy to get this stuff. So just in that first year of backpacking, just by the nature of my surroundings and in staying in cheap hostels and guest houses that didn't have fridges, and you often didn't even want to keep food in them because it would attract bugs, I just ended up eating a lot less sugary stuff. So I believe that slowly starved out a lot of the bugs that were living in my gut. But I still did have some sugar throughout that time. It wasn't completely gone, and the bugs weren't completely gone. But that was the first thing where it became manageable. So the battle became less. There was still a battle. I was still fighting those cravings, but it wasn't as intense as it had once been. And the second way that I dealt with this army of sugar-loving bugs situation that I had going on in my gut is that I sent in more troops. I sent in some of my own guys. I got my own army, and I sent my own people in there. Another thing that I did not appreciate for many years of my life, that I could do this. I can play dirty. I can send some people in there. You want to battle? We'll battle. I was trying to battle you with my mind. That was a losing battle. That was a situation of self-blame and shame, and I'm not strong enough, and how come I can't stop doing this? But really, what I needed to be doing was just to be building up my own troops. So I tried this originally. I'm talking, of course, about probiotics, the good bacteria that we want in our gut, the bacteria that feeds off of things other than sugar and gives us different cravings. And I tried this with supplements for many years, and that did not work for me at all. I spent thousands of dollars on supplements for probiotics. Didn't help. What did help for me was a couple of things. And one was eating fermented foods. So fermented foods are full of probiotics, naturally occurring probiotics. So by eating food-based probiotics from things like sauerkraut, which is fermented cabbage, or kombucha, which is fermented tea, kefir, which is you can get from milk kefir, fermented milk, or water kefir. So different things like this. Just like it's impossible to exaggerate how bad my sugar addiction was, it's impossible to exaggerate how much fermented foods helped me. And I also, just through my reading and research, came to learn and appreciate that there's something called prebiotics, which is what those probiotics live off of. So I guess the prebiotic for those other bad bugs was sugar. So the prebiotic for these good guys was plant-based foods, a lot of high fiber plant foods. So by eating those fermented foods, starting to eat more plants, I started to level the playing field in my gut. So I'd slowly killed some off. I'd put in some more of the good guys that craved things like vegetables instead of cake. And it got much, much better. In fact, that alone was enough to get rid of it. So my sugar cravings actually were finally after this gone. And it was the wildest thing after, I don't even know, a couple decades of dealing with intense sugar addiction. All of a sudden, it had zero power over me. Like I could see something sugary somewhere and ignore it. Before, if I went to a party or someone's house, or if there was dessert somewhere, I was just zeroed in on it. And if there was something sugary in my home, I thought about it all day. And it was pretty hard for me to get through the day without eating it. But now I barely notice that it's there. I still enjoy sweet stuff from time to time. It's not that I've lost enjoyment for it, but I now can have a couple bites and kind of be satisfied. It's, I'm in control now instead of those nasty little bugs being in control. So that was the second thing. And that really got me all the way there. But then the third thing that's allowed me to maintain this is mostly abstinence from sugar in my life. And it doesn't feel like a sacrifice now because I don't have those cravings and I don't have that addiction. So I don't notice it. It doesn't feel like I'm giving anything up. And I've realized that I need to stick with the abstinence because you think, oh, maybe once I have a healthy gut and things are good, like now I can handle it. And there was one point I had, because I used to make my own granola all the time before I started working when I actually had time. And I bought this big bulk thing of raisins for my granola. And I started getting in the habit of just grabbing some throughout the day. You know, it's COVID, I'm home all the time. It's always just right there. So it's just, it's a few raisins. What's that going to hurt? But I noticed over time that the cravings were coming back, slowly building. And all of a sudden, it wasn't like a want for some raisins. It was a need for some raisins. So I actually just threw the raisins away. And I realized that I had to get control of it while I still could. So by increasing the sugar intake in my life, I was building back up that army. I was feeding the wrong army, and I need to be feeding the right army. So that being said, I still have small amounts of sugar. I'll still use sometimes a little bit of honey in my sauces when I'm cooking, maybe once a month, have ice cream or something. It's not complete abstinence, but it's pretty close. And I don't know how people feel about sweetener substitutes, but I use stevia for some things that just taste better sweet. So if I have coffee or different things, I use stevia for a lot of stuff. I think for me, it's the lesser of two evils. Stevia is really highly processed, so it's probably not so good for you. And there's not a lot of research done on it. But for me, I'm hoping it does less harm than eating sugar does. So that's it. That's my sugar story. I would love to hear your sugar story. How insane am I on the scale of 1 to 10? And where are you on that scale? Just let me know. What's this been like for everybody else out there? And how are you dealing with it? How have you gotten past it, or what things work for you? Let's share our information and share our strategies and tools so together we can be healthier and happier and more awesome. So that's it. As always, sending love and support to you for whatever you're facing. I know you can do this. I know you've got this. One small baby step at a time, or a zillion ones all at once, whatever works for you, but you will get there. Thanks for watching and take care.